And so it seemed like it was time to just clean up the bylaws. And the idea that I had was we would just take the language that was in the SPJ bylaws and move it over into the SDS bylaws, which were, taking a couple of votes and we would be done with it. Well, once Bob Becker started getting into it, it turned out that it was not nearly as easy as that. Almost 100 years ago, a endowment was set up in Fort Quill, and it had trustees. Whenever the foundation was created 50 years ago, that endowment was made part of the foundation's holding, and the foundation board doubled as the trustee of the endowment. And we're supposed to sign something every year that nobody's ever done. And so, and then whatever the pictures that made that change 50 years ago have been not. So in talking with the lawyers, Bob did a whole lot of work on this. I've got to give him a lot of credit. Talking with the lawyers, it seemed like the best thing to do, or the best thing to do, was to eliminate the endowment, the Quill endowment, and just fold it into the foundation holdings. It covers about 1/4 to 1/3 of the expenses, so there's no actual effect of just doing that. The SPJ board could, if it chose, declare that money still restricted for use as well, and I don't know, we might do that once this all goes through. Anyway, so to affect that, your bylaws require 2 votes of the delegate to eliminate the endowment, and also specify that when the endowment is eliminated, that the money goes back to the original donors. As far as we know, all of those donors are long gone. They've done their 30. The whole point of here is to continue to support Quill. So what he is proposing and what's in your board doc is an amendment that the delegates can pass in September, changing what happens to the endowment when it is eliminated. Then you go to the foundation. And then once the delegates approve that, the next vote would be to eliminate the endowment, which takes under the bylaws 2 votes. The last we voted at in Baltimore, and then again in Fort Worth. So let's get that all started.
So today, do we need to vote to send this bylaw change to the delegates?
Actually, Bob and I had a good discussion about that too. I thought it didn't need to go to the delegates. He said the reading of the bylaws, as he reads them, it needs to go to all members.
Okay.
60 days before the final decision.
Okay.
So yes, you all need to vote to do that.
To send it, to basically email this change to all the members.
I guess so, yeah. Or, it could be on a note on leave saying, we're looking at this amendment, here's the link to go look at it.
Okay.
Because outside of a few people, no one's now.
That's very good.
So would Bob also want the board's recommendation to go with that? Would that be helpful?
I'm sure, yes.
Okay, so in that case, I move that we email the notification to members of the proposed bylaws to change and endorse the support.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
2 seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
I got one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Discussion.
I apologize.
Discussion.
Okay, you're correct. All right, Alex.
Well, actually, I
Okay,
put
go
your hand up first, but okay. I mean, this sounds eminently sensible. I'm wondering if we have consulted with our legal advisors.
Oh,
Maybe it's a
that's
legal-
right.
We didn't get into that, but I mean, obviously, there may be some people out there who have not yet passed, who, or people who've left money in their will that we don't know, but, some of our older members may have left money in their will to this fund. So, have we looked into those? What did you find?
This was the course that the lawyers suggested would be the way to go.
So they didn't have any advice for if someone's left money in their will, for example, specifically to this, rather than the SDX, would that ever potentially be an issue? Or if anyone who has given money to it then objects and says, oh, I wanted this to be the will fund.
I don't know if that question was raised or not. Are you trying to Bob? Bob, if anyone raised it, it would have been with Bob.
Okay, we need a lifeline to Bob. In other words, okay. Well, I mean, assuming we do.
I mean, nobody we have no record of any money going into the endowment. That's about 1924.
Okay, so it's little known. It's probably not an issue, but just assuming we do. That's right.
So these lifetime numbers, one facetious question and a serious question.
Okay.
These lifetime numbers who have died, is that our fault and are we being penalized for their dying?
Yes.
Is there a way that we can, I don't know if this would be an SPX function or SPJ function, somehow retain some sort of structure so that in they pointed out, Alex raised that if money comes in earmarked for that and we don't have anything with that same name, that we could then just, well, like I said, it doesn't have to be done in perpetuity, but just long enough that because if you were a journalist and say at age 20 in 1969 you decided to do this, well, they still be around.
Actually, as we both are talking, it occurs to me, the reason this is difficult or complicated is because it's created by bylaws.
Rather than just
once, assuming all of this goes through and it goes into the SDX holdings, the SDX board could prepare a restricted fund, continue to call it the full endowment. And if at some point in the future it made sense not to have that money restricted anymore, the board could, with a simple vote, unrestricted. The board it would be at that point become the board designated fund rather than a bylaw designated fund. And that would address the kind of question you just raised.
So we could have a board designated fund that's set up as a vehicle for people to donate to if they want that. But it would be a vehicle that the SPX board could then revert to the general.
Right.
Okay.
Any word from Bob? Do we want to wait to hear from him, or?
I mean, I would be comfortable, I don't know, maybe in the motion saying, upon it, consultation with counselors, and then, or just, I mean, I'm also just comfortable that Bob will do it if get those answers for us if we go down this road.
The proposal is it's in the packet. It's self-explanatory. It's all self-contained. There's nothing in there that's alarming.
Right.
It's just we're just asking, did we dot all the i's?
And I think if that does become a question, there are very easy ways to address it.
Okay.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Want a little discussion if the board chooses on any of the committee reports. We have a chance to read and review them. If there's any questions, items for discussion.
There was something in the freelance community report, and I guess maybe this is a question for Michael. There were a couple things that they had questions just about, like the quill and contributing, and I don't know if you could just talk about what conversations you had with both committees and community.
Sure. We have had discussions with the freelance community specifically about this, and those are ongoing. What we did with the blogs as it pertains to Quill is we've moved everything under the Quill umbrella, and we've sort of stripped these blog titles away from everything else. What we found is we had a lot of different buckets. So we had a membership blog, we had a diversity blog, we had independent journalists, the freelance blog, dozens of blogs. Some were fairly active. Some hadn't been posted to in almost 3 years. And as we met as a full advisory committee, as we discussed in the office, we determined that the best route was to put everything under the Quill umbrella, publish everything to the same platform, that WordPress platform we launched about a month ago. And instead of having these buckets, these individual blogs, we would tag things. So everything shows up on the same site. And just at the bottom, there would be a tag for, you know, ethics or freelance or whatever we decide to call it. So that was communicated to different blog contributors. And the other thing I will add, everything now is edited in-house with 2 reads before it's posted to our site. Whereas in the past, things could have been published without any edits at all. So now, if we get a contribution from someone from the freelance community for what was the freelance blog, it will be posted to the Quill site, tagged as freelance with 2 edits before we post on the site. So from our standpoint, we have continuity of process in terms of content that appears on spj.org, and we're preserving each of these blogs, albeit in a different manner. If you decide you want to have all of your ethics blog items, on one site, you can choose to do that. You can click on the ethics tag, favorite it, refresh that site anytime you come back. I think from a user experience, this allows them to see sort of the breadth of our content instead of being funneled into silos.
So yeah, I'm just glad you heard, because I know there were a couple things, questions for the board, how do we contribute? But I'm glad it sounds like you're having those conversations with them, so.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we want to stress to everybody is we are not turning down content. And I think that was a fear from some people that they've lost something. That's not the case. We just want to make their content better and if anything, make it more visible to people.
I'm not really following along with what you're saying. I went to SPJ blogs and pulls up the page SPJ blogs method. So what is different about that?
I think that is part of the old infrastructure. If you go to spj.org/quill, and the regional blogs aren't part of this change. The regional blogs still sort of retain their independence because they're more community driven. So if you go to the Quill site, everything you see, except for sort of the Quill feature stories, those are old blog material. So the top story on the left-hand side, special assault, that would have appeared in the diversity blog. Instead now it appears tagged with diversity, both at the top and then also at the bottom where we have a series of tags.
But if you are curious and say, I want to know if the diversity blog is up to the SPJ diversity blog, that's where you can end up?
No, you would click on the diversity tag at the bottom, and that would show you any story we have tag diversity.
Sorry, where is that diversity tag?
It's at the bottom of the story. You'll see.
You have to open a story to find it.
It's at the top of the head.
Yeah, it's just that's not a clickable link, but that is a tag. Under the chat at the bottom, it's tagged under journalism, to more diversity, sexual assault, sexual harassment.
I'm just kind of curious. When I've done a search 100 times, I always type in SPJ blogs, and I just, what is it about this new system that we're sure that people are going to get the blogs through the Quill homepage and know to do that?
I think there are a couple things. One, I think most mainstream media outlets have determined the traditional blog infrastructure sort of is past its prime. I think if you look at the Ringer, Politico, things like that, they don't tend to have this home page infrastructure where you go to the home page, they have all these different categories, and then you go to these categories. What they tend to find is social referrals are larger. And in addition to that, if you build a home page that has a lot of things you have to fill, the problem is when you don't fill them, you look stale. that was one thing we absolutely experienced. So if we're bringing people to spj.org to see our content, and then half or more than half of those content categories haven't been filled out in months, sometimes years, that was bad luck. So here, we're not, our front face is not a stale website. It's something that is continuous, it's updating all the time. And I think without those buckets, it allows people to move more freely between our content. So the tags at the bottom allow people to move to different topics on our site that might be somehow related, but not fall, under this narrow silo that we've created before.
So related to that, if somebody went to spj.org and typed in diversity, they find all of our content, regardless of what page it's on, that has a diversity tab on it.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I can't say whether the search works that way.
I just did it and I got there in 2 links.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
That's
goal.
the idea, right?
Yeah, it worked pretty well.
They said the regional blogs are not affected, so how should people try to access those now?
I believe through the same method they used before. I can't speak to exactly how those work, because it just wasn't part of our sort of quill.
Where are they now?
Yeah, I am likewise not finding like the regions tab that used to exist, so you can get to your 12 regions easily. Tara?
So if you go back to what Andy referenced before, the blogs.spjnetwork.org, there is still a regional blogs tab up at the top where you can get through all of those.
But if you're coming to the homepage, right?
The Quill homepage or just spj.org?
SPJ.org.
Okay.
So there's no longer, there's a chapters tab, but there's no longer a regions tab. And when you get to the chapters tab, there's no jump off there to get to the blogs. So not to belabor it, it does seem as though the blogs should be easier to find, right? And that they might live, this seems appropriate to staff, they might live on the Quill page. If we have other blogs that are accessible from the Quill page, is that a place where you can have links to
Or maybe the chapters tab.
I think we can have Billy add it.
Yeah, I think that's probably a Billy question. I think when the Quill website was relaunched, he also had a redesign of spj.org. My personal opinion is I think the regional blogs probably belong on spj.org, not Quill, but I'm certainly open to whatever makes sense.
Yeah, I think that it probably, to your point, more closely aligns with the chapters tab, right? Because it's what's happening in my area.
Take a look at that.
Journalism review and less of a membership magazine. So it does make sense that the region blogs go someplace where members.
Thank you, Michael. And while you're up, how about giving Michael and Alex giving us an update on
Yes.
EIJ? Michael?
Good, I was.
Sure. Well, as Alex can attest, we have had dozens of phone calls as a programming committee with our partners in RTDNA. We have made it through our first and second round of review of program proposals, and just this past week we reached out to every program proposal that we have passed, which is a total of 44 breakouts. As a committee, we have 49 to fill in total. And there are, in addition to that, 5 DJs producing on its own that Patty is leading that charge, working with Allison, and I have to do that. So if you add in those SPJ 5, the 49 that we have, there are an additional 8 that RTDNA is putting together. So we have made really good progress. We have a handful of breakouts that we still need to fill. There are about 3 or 4 that Alex and I are going to work on specifically to try to find producers for holes that we have sort of determined exist in sort of the proposals that we have. One thing that we are doing differently there is we've really streamlined our tracks. So we only have 4. This was something that we discussed at length early in the process. What do we want this to look like? Those tracks are digital news management, news gathering, and career development. I think one thing that we had a concern as a committee, and I know RTDNA had the same, is what about diversity? The way that we've approached it as a committee is we think diversity falls into most, if not all, of these categories and should be considered not as its own separate track, but as something that is really intertwined with everything that we do.
Where does ethics fall on the track?
Ethics falls typically in news gathering and news management. Sometimes it falls in digital. Sometimes it falls in career development. We haven't yet determined how we are going to market these programs in the program on the app, on the website. I think that we created these tracks, especially just to sort of guide our thinking and help us to compartmentalize each of these program proposals we had, which we had 114
No,
proposals.
it's even more than that.
Yeah. They would add the ideas.
I was saying that one.
Yeah, and I did plan on talking about the tracks. I don't know if you had more to say, but
Nope.
no, the tracks, we felt this was a fundamental shift in thinking, and we actually spent a few phone calls discussing and debating the tracks. In the past, we simply had too many tracks, and of course, there was a bit of a sense that everyone wanted a new track, and it just kept growing, and some of the tracks had overlap. It was difficult to figure out the difference. But we have now the 4 tracks, news gathering, news management, digital, and career development. We used to call these career tips, but it's basically advice on getting your first job, transitioning to a new job, that sort of thing. And as Michael pointed out, we have, some people were missing the old tracks. Well, they are in fact all there. But this in fact is guiding us to some new content. For example, with diversity, the example he gave. In the past, we've had sessions on diversity in news coverage, how you cover diverse groups. But I don't remember us, at least in my time, ever having something on diversity in news management, hiring and managing for diversity. And now we will have those sessions in the news management track. And it's the same really with FOIA and ethics. We have sessions in each of those, news gathering and news management, because they are looked at a little differently. So, and I think we're actually ready to talk about a little bit of the content that we're already producing. So, I mean, I feel comfortable. That has been settled. That is the good news. The super sessions, we are actually looking at possibly having 4 this year. We normally have 3, but sometimes 4. The Paul White Award is always considered a super session. So we'll get some high profile correspondents and journalists covering that. We have one that we've added recently, which I'm very excited about, on newsroom structure and how that could affect the profession going forward. So looking at media consolidation, also spin-offs, looking at what's happening, for example, at Time Inc., where they were bought, but now they're spinning off the key titles. As well as joint ventures. That's obviously a huge trend in our business, and how that might affect people going forward in the professions. And then one by popular demand is Me Too coverage. We are still seeking a high-profile woman in this who's been vocal on this to moderate that, but we want to have a panel with some of the top people there. And the Me Too is interesting because that also fits into we decided into the news coverage and news management. So the one is going to be the super session. But one thing I pushed very for, Mike said, I mentioned this many, many times in meetings until we got to that point of the discussion of our own generated ideas. We need a power shift summit at EIJ, and we're going to have one. That is the exciting thing. We're working with the people who produce this at museum. We have 3 back-to-back breakout sessions, and we're going to have that programming in a 3-hour block. Many of the things they talked about there, and this started because of the Me Too movement, but it's not only about empowerment in newsrooms now for women, and we have interns and other issues. diversity. So we're going to cover that, and that's going to be part of our management track. And beyond that, we do have many. So one thing we've done, we've gotten through the proposals, which I counted about 150 with the ideas. So we've winnowed that down. We've got some great people. Michael's contacted them already. And the other thing we've done is we've sort of divided up. These are the SPJ producer sessions. There's some that RTDNA is doing and some that we're combining on. So that's really where we're at now, is trying to find great speakers. So questions.
We had talked about in selecting the fellows.
Yes. Oh, okay. That was another thing I wanted to speak with. One has already said that she's unable to do something other than the fellow, and we're working on another session we're doing for the first time, and this was actually Patty's brainstorm. It's the Find Fellows, and that's her name. So she's giving the names here. And as Michael mentioned, Patty is producing 5 and working with Michael and I, and then Michael and I are producing like 3 to 5 too. So for arts sessions. The Find Fellows, the idea that Patty had is we invite the current and some previous fellows for a panel. And I don't know, Patty, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Right, so we reached out to fellows of the society of the last decade, and of that list, we have 5 pretty strong commitments, and then you were going to reach out to this year's fellows when the time is right.
Yeah, Robert Rosenthal is on board. He's very good.
And so the idea is we have these high-profile people. They obviously like SPJ. We like them. We name them a fellow, and then we don't do that much with them. So this could be an institutionalized program. Every year we invite recent fellows to come back. And at this point, we're framing it as a fairly loose directive, which is the state of journalism. Right? So these are people who are near the end of their careers typically, and they've seen a lot. I suggested that the sitting president or the upcoming president, after the convention, be the person, sorry, phone going on, be the moderator as a way to welcome the new president in every year. So that's where we stand at this moment, to try to, basically use these people and bring more high-profile names to the lineup.
I was so excited when Patty mentioned this because the Paul White Award, they make a very big deal out of them, and they have a whole super session. We give out awards only at the awards dinner. Not even all of our members attend the awards dinner because it's a ticketed event. It's actually quite expensive. I don't know how many students are there, for example.
They don't.
Right. So this will be open to everyone, our members, and even the other people there, because we should have some good profile, high profile fellows. So,
quick question. It seems like the agenda or the schedule is already pre-packed. In the past, there's always been some wiggle room, some 1 or 2 open sessions. Okay, because obviously you don't know what is going to happen between now and September, that there may be a need to be a session to address it.
Well, for example, this past year, when I was on the committee, we added 2 last minute sessions within less than a month. One on disaster coverage and one on, which I moderated because I was on the panel and I had a background covering this, on covering hate groups. So those came up within like the last 2 or 3 weeks before convention, and they were so topical we got them on. But we have a few openings in the schedule. What would you say we have, maybe 4 or 5 that we left open?
4 that we're leave open.
All right, that's good.
And some we may fill in the next few months, but we should have at least 1 or 2 spots available in that last 4-week period.
All right, that's great. All right, questions? Lauren.
And I'm not sure if this is for you guys or if it's for staff. It's about the region meetings. I know that there have been problems in the past having individual rooms for each of the 12 regions, and wanted to make sure that that's being addressed. So we'll be able to have that.
So every time we go to convention planning, we know that is the goal. The goal is to get every region in their own room. When we are talking about space, at the end of the day, do we want to get rid of an educational program so that each of our 12 regions can have their own room? This consensus in the past has been no. We do our best. I do think we have more smaller rooms that are available in Baltimore. So the goal would be to get all 12 there. One of the challenges is also all 12 at the same time block is nearly impossible. And so it may be that we have to do 6 one day and 6 the next day. It may be that they run concurrent to programming. When you are putting together a master list of things, we can't have all the things. So we do our best.
Right, so splitting 6 and 6, I don't think anybody here would have an issue with. Concurrent with programming is what's problematic.
Yep.
Okay.
We try, you know, and then we've tried before early in the morning. That's problematic sometimes too. So also late at night is also problematic too. So I will say, I do think the space lends itself to allowing us to have a little bit more flexibility than we did when we were in Anaheim. But we will, and also we only have RTDNA as a partner this year instead of a third group, which also gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of scheduling and having space and enough rooms. So fingers crossed, we are not in the final stages of blocking everything out for sure, but that is always on our list.
This is just kind of a personal point of interest. Where's the opening night reception?
I am happy to answer that question offline, not while we're streaming.
Okay.
Is that cool? It hasn't been announced.
Okay.
I would hate for it to be leaked before we've had that conversation with our TDNA about announcements.
And I know this probably goes without saying, but it's just kind of a good reminder. I hope we're keeping diversity all across in all areas when we're thinking of who's on panels, especially, you know, when it comes to even what they do, where they work, small, large, broadcast, print. And then the other thing I noticed when I was organizing something that came up, we didn't have anything with that reference or involve anyone from the LGBTQ community, so that's just something to be aware of. Sometimes they might get forgotten, so just make sure we're keeping all of that in mind.
Andy?
3 things. Once Lauren brought up the regional meetings, that triggered a memory of mine, and I appreciate the difficulty of trying to schedule those, and I know there's some question about whether they're even worthwhile, but I would just encourage us not to do what we did last year, which is to put everybody in one. That was, so I'm happy to do 6 Monday or plug them in wherever, whatever you try to arrange. It's great. I will also, too, I'll put in a plug for something that I've mentioned a couple of times, which is that we consider our election to be something that we spend a lot of time on throughout the campaign season, and I'm happy to, as I've said, I've volunteered to work on trying to organize meetups or Google Hangouts or Twitter chats and so forth. It's something where we can go over issues, but what I've also suggested as part of that is doing something at the convention where there is a session where the candidates can sit down and answer some questions. We can see them. I think that treats the election more seriously. I know there's not been a lot of support for that, but I'll put in that plug again just in case. And the third thing is just throwing out an idea when Alex mentioned how we give out awards and it's at our president's dinner. That triggered a suggestion that I heard from the past. The idea that we do as much as we can to see that students can actually attend this, because that's something we do need to see. And his idea, which I'll pass along credit to him, is have sponsor a student. And you buy a ticket and then also have a slot where you will buy a second ticket and sponsor a student who would otherwise not be able to see it. I would do that. I don't know if others would.
I like that we could start with, I guess, the EIJ news team maybe would be, I mean, how would we select them? We have to select the students somehow.
Haley?
Would it be, I don't know anything about how like this gets paid for. Obviously the tickets are expensive for a reason, but would it be at all possible to have like a student rate for tickets? Like the reason that most people don't go is that it's almost another $100 on top of like an already expensive conference. And as a student, the problem for me going to that banquet is that I don't have expendable income like that. Like I save over the summer to go to EIJ, but that's not a lot of people's priority. So like I think it'd be very fortunate to look into potentially bringing that cost way down, because in my experience, there's been less than 10 people under the age of 40, full stop.
Matt?
Since Karetzi's not here, I know this is his thing every year, but I agree with it. The Joy Mayer Diversity Fellows,
Yeah.
I think we need to do more to bring them in and not just kind of have them other and over here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what, I think last year they dressed a bunch of us, and there was a space for us to talk to
There
these
was.
folks.
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
That was
So I just
like
think,
the SDX leaders reception, right?
Yes.
you know, keep that in mind too, as we're.
You just get, there is actually diversity oriented session we're working on, but we have partners, we're not ready to go into detail because it's still early planning, but actually that would be a very good thing to bring in those fellows, yeah.
As far as, just as for the student rate, is that, would we just take, how much of a financial hit could we take? I mean, could we do a cost? I mean,
So this is obviously something Allison can work with the rest of the staff on moving forward. I will tell you, that is not a moneymaker for us.
okay,
What we pay for hotel meals is about what we charge with a little bit of cushion. It is not, we do not upcharge that event.
So that's what it costs.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what I know what a banquet
All right,
costs.
so it would have to be a, sponsor a student.
Yeah.
Do you think a sponsorship program is like actually feasible though? Like with people already paying $80 to get in the door, would they want to do it again?
Patty?
So I know that some of the folks that I've talked to, Michelle and Tom, we have some extra money left from our regional conventions.
Oh.
And we talked about how do we use that, where should that go? Talked about awarding dollars to students within our region for any number of things, right? It could be a scholarship, it could be support for EIJ, it could specifically be for dinners, right? You could peel off and say you want to just give some to national to, for example, have the diversity fellows come to dinner. Do they come to dinner?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do. Is that part of their benefit of being selected?
Yeah.
Okay, so never mind on that part, but that's, if there's regional funds, you could bring students from your region, support them specifically so they can eat. And then on that line, let's sprinkle them throughout the tables. One of the daunting things about the dinner is that you go in and you don't know where to sit, right? And if you haven't prearranged who you're going to sit with, then you're kind of like odd man out, where do I sit, right? And certainly for a student coming in without another, a sidekick, that would, let's make sure we take care of that small detail.
Jane?
And just a suggestion along those lines, the New Jersey Pro chapter this past year lost a very active member and former president, cancer, and immediately stepped into to create a scholarship for people to go to the regional, and just thinking that the chapter would take it out of chapter funds, and people started donating to it. So that might be an idea for if you want to honor somebody by sponsoring a student. That might be something that chapters would like to do.
Lauren?
Two thoughts, one for this year and one for the future. Have we ever thought of getting sponsors for the dinner to bring the actual dinner cost down? Is that something that's feasible?
Right.
And then a longer term picture, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, have we thought about changing the format and maybe not making it a dinner so it's more accessible to people?
Let me just, by point of reference, Paul White Award used to be a huge black tie event.
Right.
Very classy, very nice. And then RTDNA ran into some financial issues, and then eventually it downsized. There was griping about, I'm not saying we should do this with SPJ, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying RTDNA had to deal with this head on. So they started to downsize. Yes, there was griping for the first couple of years. Did it diminish the program? Maybe initially, but they did not have a problem getting folks who, because it's such a prestigious honor, turning out. And now, as you know, as long as it's done well, it can work. But I don't think you want to jump into it right away.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying, not now, I'm just saying, to talk about for the future.
But they have done it.
I think following along the idea of regional funds, like I've used regional has helped me. They helped me get to New Orleans back when I was a junior. I think it would be much more pertinent between the cost of, like when we were going to Anaheim, for instance, like I live in Ohio, so I had to fly, and that was like $300, and I booked as early as I could, and like the conference itself was almost $200, and then the hotel on top of that was $800. It ended up being, we split it between 3 people, and so like we brought the cost down for ourselves as much as possible. But I think a much smarter use of money if we really want to show support for students would be to have more scholarships, because we have like, I was one of the Columbia Fellows this past EIJ, which was like an excellent honor, and I was very thankful for it, but there are, I think, 8 spots there. There's not very many. They're kind of hard to get. Like, I think something we would want to look into moving forward is to find more ways to get more students just in the door at all, much less to the dinner.
Actually, we did look at this data in the committee, and the percentage of students is actually quite high. Michael, I hit the good spot. I don't remember. I think it was like a third or something. I want to say third. Maybe that was all academic.
I think last year 17%.
Okay.
The previous time we did it with just our DNA, it was about 20, 25% in there.
How many of those students are from wealthier schools, though? In my experience, a lot of the students there are from private schools and generally have more opportunities. Like, I go to a state school, so I get no funding from my university at all to go to that kind of thing, whereas like it's a lot different for a private school. So like I think that'd be very valuable to look into going forward, is if we could find ways to bring the cost down, which I realize that's not exactly feasible, or find ways like as both regionally and nationally to sponsor students just getting in the door. Because those experiences have been so valuable for me, and I know a lot of people who want to go but can't, because like I said, it was on my credit card, it was like $1,500 to get to the conference, which like ended up working out because like we split it between a couple people and everything else, but like I had to fund $1,500 when all was said and done, which is not feasible for
And
students.
to the larger issue, your point about very few people under 40 in a particular room, how many of us are under 40? Yeah, well, okay, a few of them. Obviously, leadership, we are seasoned pros in all regards, but the future of our organization depends on bringing in new bodies. And we know what the membership trends have been in recent years. And, if we have dollars left that are not devoted to other things, let's not buy tote bags. Okay, sorry, to come back to the tote bags. Let's bring more students to EIJ and try to grow our future leaders. It is so transformational, right? That's how you get them. You bring them to these big events, and they're so excited about journalism and all the great people they meet, and how wonderful we celebrate their successes. And along those lines, I just want to know, the MOE event this year, do you have any change up on that, Michael? Because having attended it last year, it just was really flat.
Yep.
And the students didn't mix, even though I think it was called a mixer. They came, they sat down with their peer groups, and they didn't get up. And so I just wonder what the thinking is on that particular event.
Yeah, that's a Christine Cordial question.
Okay. Well, I'll ask her what she's putting up.
Yeah, they are reevaluating that whole thing. That was, like Christine said yesterday, I think her MOE was really her priority this year. So she's looking at that to figure out something.
No,
Oh, yes, please send them to her. She'll love that.
Yeah. All right, Matt.
Along those lines, I don't know if this is the right place to bring this idea up, but we were talking about last night at dinner, like newspapers have this thing where you can buy a student a subscription. A newspaper helps a student, kind of taps into people's charitable giving in the sense that everyone wants to help our journalists and help journalists. So I wonder if we could do that with subscriptions for students.
Like a Kickstarter?
No, not just like a button that says buy a membership for a student. And I don't know the mechanics of it, whether you have a specific student in mind or it's just like, here's my $85, find a deserving student.
So there's definitely a model for that. I already did it, started it 2 years ago, and I think has continued to do it. And I know I bought it, and specifically I was able to say I wanted to go to an Ohio University student specifically, because that's where I went to school. So I mean, I don't know the back end, maybe you could ask them, but it's as a user who was donating, it was so easy. And I know I talked to other people who also donated, like they're like, oh yeah, I did that. So
did you then meet your
I
person who supported?
No, I didn't.
Because that would be cool,
Yeah,
right? Then
they
to meet up
didn't
after
tell
the
that
convention
would
with
be
the
like
person
the
you
whole
paid
thing.
for.
We do have that. We do have that. Specifically around graduation time is when we promote it. So it goes in leads. Do you know a deserving student? Do you want to sponsor their membership? Blah, blah, blah. I think we definitely can make it more prominent all year around, but we do see kind of an uptick at graduation. It's a good gift. We want to sponsor someone. So we'll make a note to make that more prominent.
I think that's
Jane.
great, and I would challenge everybody in this room to sponsor one student. It's what, $37.50? What is it now for a
Yeah.
student? For
Yes.
1 year?
Well, you could
And
buy
reach
the
out and
member,
actually,
you could buy the new grad rate, and it's 75 for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the graduate.
Please sponsor new grads, thank you.
Jane.
I just, Michael's probably thought of this, but I just wanted to like remind you when you set things up and set them in tracks to go over your list again, because some programs, it's like a thing. I mean, I cover a lot of conferences because of the kind of journalism I practice, and that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we will identify ones that we, is primarily in this draft, but it also speaks to news management. So let's make sure when we are listing these, if we are doing so by track, that this shows up in multiple ones. We don't want to do that with everyone, because otherwise what's the point of track? But absolutely, your point is well taken.
Andy.
This may not be a relevant question anymore, but I remember last year, there was some concern that the ethics committee had put in a bunch of proposals and none of them were accepted. I'm just wondering, is that still a thing anymore?
Have you spoken with Andrew?
Andy and I have a monthly sit-down coffee. I mean, I'm closely in touch with Andy. First of all, and I know I don't want to get off on this track. It's actually not technically true that none of the ethics panels were chosen last year. Andy did do a couple of sessions. Some of those, I think, maybe were his own thing versus ethics, but he did.
They were not the ones submitted by the
But see, the problem is, when someone comes in, it doesn't say committee. It has his name on it. And we don't generally do more than 2 sessions per presenter, except in extraordinary circumstances. I mean, the power shift summons would be 3. So I think what happened there is that he submitted all the ideas for the committee and also some of his own. He was selected, but we didn't know what was ethics committee and what was Andy, basically. So Andy was selected, but we had no idea whether they were coming from other members of the ethics committee. So one thing I did advise people this year is if committees have multiple people who are interested in producing or presenting, that you submit under your own names, because the way we work, for various reasons, we don't want to have producers doing more than 2 generally. First of all, they're also presenting, then it becomes too much of the program, but also we don't want to spread them too thin. So that's what happened there. I was in touch with Andy. Andy is involved in several sessions. And I don't know if he's communicated with the ethics committee what he's working on yet. And so basically go back and check with him, but he and I have coffee all the time. We've talked about it, and he's definitely on the program.
But the bottom line of there were submissions from SPJ for ethics sessions, and there are SPJ ethics sessions this year.
Yes, there definitely are SPJ ethics sessions.
Yeah, if anything, Andrew might be annoyed by how many he has to produce.
He has to do quite a lot. And there's one idea that was of the committee. So what happens is after we would go through 2 reviews of the submissions, we decide where the holes are and what we need to fill and what SPJ and RTB&A will do. And so separately, in addition to the ones he submitted, we've created one where we want to match up SPJ and RTB&A ethics, assuming their ethics chair goes along with it. So he's actually going to be busy. I think he is probably going to go over our 2 limit this year with that one. Yeah, so.
Okay. And I would note that one of the SPJ 5, meaning 5 that are just like designated for our members, it has an ethics focus, and I'm working with Andy to make that happen. But I mean, it speaks to the point, are we going to annoy people with too much ethics? But in the app, do we have like topic areas? And so people want to hit an ethics tab somewhere where everything would front load so they could see, or is it just the 4?
It's still in development, so
yeah, okay.
I don't think those questions are answered yet, but I think those concerns, we will make sure we know and try to reflect as we're putting together.
I can't echo enough Lynn's concern or Lynn's reminder that we're looking at every panel. We say, is this as diverse, gender, race, LGBT, whatever metrics we want to hit as possible.
And to that point, Patty, at the very start of this process, before we moved to the single thing, I came up with a list of strong women to participate on panels. Now, why did I choose women? Obviously, because B2 was out there. And some of those women do come from diverse backgrounds. They also come from diverse media. I made certain they had, some broadcast, some print. Also tried to get some political views. I had a couple that are more conservative on the list. I don't know whether they'll be selected, but I have done that so that as we are creating these panels, we're creating ourselves, we do have those listed within. We're looking for a Me Too moderator now. We'll probably select someone from that list. So, Letitia.
I wanted to bring up something on the membership report. So one of the strategies on page 71 of the packet was to diversify membership of SPJ, so getting to the whole diversity issue. Specifically mentioned were historically Black colleges and universities. I want to also make sure they're touching on Hispanic serving institutions, minority serving institutions, all of those designations.
Absolutely. Robin Sakula is a person, if you want to send her an email and just, share those concerns and sort of highlight that point to her, that would be great. Thank you. Anything else? Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael, Alex, Patty, for all your work so far on EIJ, your continued work. It's going to be a great conference, and in no small part to the hard work that the three of you and everyone else is doing who's involved in it. So thank you so much. The last thing I wanted to touch base on, Alex, you had mentioned, we touched a little bit yesterday about governance. And Lynn, you had mentioned something to me. Refresh my recollection of what you had mentioned about governance.
So we kind of glazed over this yesterday, but I do think it's something that I would like to propose voting and approving today. So if you remember when all this was going on, when we were reducing the size of the board, we came up with like draft policies basically of like what this would look like, how board qualifications, what does a good candidate look like? I'm trying to think what were some of the other policies we had.
The stipend policy was in there, it was repeated because we had some change in language from RDs to RCs. The stipends are all the same.
So it's in the board packet, and I was suggesting that we approve those today if possible, because then when we go into September and we have these new people in these positions, that everything is like up to date and ready to go.
Didn't you do that in for Zoom meeting?
So in the Zoom meeting, we only approved the draft policy for the nominations committee. We didn't do the rest of them.
Okay, so what you're asking for is for us to approve
The rest of them, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
some of it I recognize.
So,
Yeah,
would you like-
the nominations one shouldn't be in here. That got lumped
Okay,
in.
so,
The nominations.
okay, so can you tell us which pages of the packet?
Yeah, let's
43.
43. Except not 43, but let's see, go to.
43 is the position profile. Board appointments is on 45, and then reimbursements is 46.
What have we already approved?
Approve the nominations committee, the composition of the nominations committee, but not the.
So, okay, so which page is that on?
For me, it says 46, but I may have the older one downloaded, so there was a new board packet.
So the nominations committee policy should not be in there. We have an approved one. It just got lumped with the draft policy. So you can disregard that one completely. And the first one, if you guys want to discuss, would then start on page 43, which is the board of directors position profile. Yeah. Sorry, yes.
The messy aspect of this is that it has language that's alternate language, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what Andy suggested when we decided against the idea that the nominations committee endorse or recommend.
But that part,
We already did. That's
that's
part of
what-
the
yeah,
process.
it looks like this is.
So, yeah.
We already decided.
We decided.
Right, I know we did, but what I'm looking at in front of me, and this is the final board packet, still has that language in there.
But it shouldn't be, that,
It shouldn't
the whole
be there.
section is not supposed to be.
Right,
Yeah.
so the
Gotcha.
new stuff starts with board appointments, is that right, Tara? Or position. profile.
43,
43.
position profile.
Well,
43 still has the alternative
Or
language.
46.
46, I have to find that. Should be 46.
Those, it depends if you open the PDF packet, your
Right, if
system
you
might
open-
give you 82
Yeah.
pages,
Right,
but the page number on the sheet itself is a different.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're looking at 43 on the sheet
On the
itself.
Oh,
Correct,
right.
on the actual PDF, yeah. Right.
So I would propose, and I mean, we can have discussion, but I would propose looking at these and taking a vote to approve what is drafted for the position profiles, for the board appointments, for the reimbursement guidelines. Yes, that's all.
Okay, so motion made, do I have a second? Second. All right, Patty seconds.
I would be fine with splitting them up.
Okay, so do you want to re-offer your motion?
Yes,
One of
so
them?
the first one, to approve the draft guidelines for the position profiles.
Position profiles, do I have a second? Second, Patty seconds. Okay, discussion on the draft of position profiles.
Just as a setting the stage here, this was language that the task force put together in conjunction with Joe's help. And it's essentially the things we already do. I would say that the surprises of what we're looking for in board members, but a strong flavor of strategic thinking, forward thinking. Yeah, so that's probably the only thing that's maybe a little stronger than may have pre-existed.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We're going to make a second motion?
Yes, my second motion is to approve the draft policy for the board appointments.
Jane seconds. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Third motion,
My
please.
third motion would be to approve the draft policy for the reimbursement guidelines for board members and regional coordinators.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So these dollar amounts are the same as.
The one that I was wondering, I don't know, the executive finance committee members, has that always been 2,500 or did that go up?
Yep, so it wasn't there at all. However, it is because whoever is appointed to that had no money. If traditionally it's been regional directors or at-large board people who have a stipend. Bill is a prime example this year where he funded his own expense. If they're regional coordinators and they're not on the board and they have their stipend, or if it's someone else outside of this board, they would have no money to come to meetings.
So
That makes sense?
Right, it makes sense, but it strikes me that, not that anybody's gonna try to double dip, right? But that this
Right.
will only apply to non-board persons
And we
who
can put
don't
that
fall
language
into one
there.
of the other categories.
Yeah, that, I think we have, I believe we have the same question, and I've looked at this so many times until you mentioned it, I didn't think of it. They're not allowed to double, in other words, if someone is a board appointee with a 1,500 stipend, and they're also appointed to, say, the finance committee, it's not cumulative.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah, we can put
that
that language in there.
clarified on the language.
It would be a higher amount, right? So let's say you are an at-large director who's on executive committee, it would be 2,500.
Exactly. And actually, we do, in our current policy, don't, like an RD or an AT who's on the finance master chapter, don't they already get? the
I'd have
extra
to look
1,000?
back, and I think they
so.
do, yes.
I think if you're on exec or finance, but certainly if you're on exec as an AD or an RD, I believe you get the extra 1,000.
Mhm.
So I think that's actually what we currently give. I just want to make sure the language is clear since we're approving this.
Andy?
We talked a little bit in the caucus meeting beforehand about the transition to regional coordinators and how they're doing a lot of the same things. But the one question that came up is the expectation that they would have to come to the national conference. And I think that there's some skepticism about whether that should be a requirement. And that ties into the amount of stipend that they're given. I'm not a big fan of the stipends, but I'm kind of just held a piece on that. I know that some people do travel and need to, but I'm just wondering what our thinking is that, is this a mandate?
Well, I mean, it's not, well, right now, I mean, look how many of our board members aren't here. So, I mean, it's, people, this is a volunteer position, they come, we ask them to come, they're expected to come, but no one's throwing them off the board if they don't come. So it's one of those things where, yes, I mean, there's many board members here who receive stipend who are not here with us because of work obligations, family obligations, whatever. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's a situation where the stipend also helps them continue to travel throughout the region. So that $1,500 yes, there is, we would like that money, to be used to come to EIJ, to meet with your other regional coordinators, to talk strategy, to share common interests, to share common concerns, problems, etc. Okay, but that money is also used, as it is now for regional directors, to continue traveling through your region. Yes, Lauren?
Well, and Matt and I talked about this a little bit yesterday about recruiting regional coordinators. I have not been a regional director. But, so in talking to people, and to me, one of the enticements to get them to do it is you can get your trip to convention paid. And I think that is something that
that's what the 1,500 is for.
Well,
So, not understanding your.
Well, I guess let me just clarify. I'm not actually challenging you, Matt, even though my personal thinking, I'm challenging you. Now that it's more about the idea that they have to come to the conference. And to your first point, people don't show up. These are people on the board. They have to be at the board meeting. The regional reporters are not on the board.
Yeah.
We talked about, but they'll still come to the convention because they need to attend a 1-hour meeting. Well, that's my question. Do they need to come to a 1-hour meeting?
So that's okay. Having been a national conference, national committee chair, I couldn't imagine not having been there, and I was chairing a 1-hour meeting because the work that I was doing was something continuous all year long with people from around the country, and we all wanted to get together. So the work that you guys do, I think it's even just as strong, if not stronger, of an impetus to want to be there.
I mean, you still want to meet with the leaders and members of your region who are going to be at conference to have those discussions. I mean, the only difference is you're just not going to have to sit in 2 4-hour board meetings. I mean, everything else is seemingly the same.
Okay, so it's not like the board is insisting that regional coordinators attend the board meeting.
No, absolutely not.
But you would be certainly
welcome
to be here.
As part of the audience.
So we do expect them to attend so that they can meet with each other.
Yes, and with the leaders of their regions.
Yeah. But as
The chapter leaders, the
suggested,
student chapter leaders, the members.
we suggested at some point, I think we maybe raised this issue yesterday, that there be on the schedule a time when the board and the regional coordinators could be together, whether it's informal or formal, but that there should be designated time for that opportunity for sharing and so forth.
Michelle?
That would be my advice.
My interpretation of the discussion this morning is a little different.
Okay, sorry.
I thought we were talking about the April meeting, not, I think definitely the regional coordinators should go to the national meeting. The question was, should they go to the April meeting?
No.
Right.
No.
I mean, I think if they wanted to.
Yeah,
they
they could.
could. I mean, I wouldn't say no. I mean, anyone can come.
Exactly.
We were saying that we didn't think, we thought it was a waste of money to fly here.
Yeah.
I would agree on that. I would agree on that.
Agreed.
When
Yeah.
you have a role
Things to talk about, we
and,
can have a.
you know, national conference, totally different.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're kind of getting a little off the topic of, we have a motion in a second regarding, Sue, I'm sorry, go
This
ahead.
is really only applicable to me, but I think it has to be addressed, I think. This is for the year coming, correct?
Correct.
And this position, while it is set after the end of that year, there's nothing in the provision for me to attend the meeting.
See, this is difficult because, and, I mean, this is why perhaps we should do this in the first meeting of the new
I mean, you can
board.
have just a sunset provision that goes,
Yeah.
We could, or, I mean, could we hold this to the first board meeting of the new board,
Tara.
Sunday morning meeting?
I think that.
Hold on, let's, Tara wanted to say something.
So this is fiscal year 19, so it does start August. So August of this year.
Okay.
So we would need to put a provision in stating the people who still need to attend as part of the governance transition would receive stipends from the prior policy.
Tara, would there be a problem, since this is really for the new board structure, would there be a problem on waiting and approving this in our first board meeting of the new board on the Sunday?
Well,
morning?
because it kicks in August.
Yeah.
So we would need to do it now.
Then would you be open to amending your motion to include the language to?
But we're still under the old.
I would be open to that. Yes, let's do that.
Okay, but no, this is dealing with a transition that's going to kick in starting August.
So when is your?
Yes, so yes, I would be open to amending the language so that it reflects that there are still people that are on the board that still
In their
get
last moments, yeah.
stipends while they finish out their last term.
And do I have a second?
Second, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion, amended motion that has been seconded on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, any final thoughts, comments, before we, have a motion to adjourn, Lauren?
There was something that came up last night that when I was chatting with a few board members after dinner, and I apologize in advance. But apparently for our convention in Indianapolis, that RTDNA is not planning to partner with us.
It's not set in stone.
It's still an unknown.
Yeah.
It's a no.
Okay, so my understanding for that was the reason was the location, is that correct?
No.
I don't know if you were in an executive session to get an answer as to why, but.
I would ask that it does.
Okay.
And so.
Okay, so we're gonna, all right, we'll briefly go into executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? Second? Second. All right, second, Patty. Okay, we're now in executive session.
I'm sorry.
All
Who
those in
moved
favor,
that?
please say
Sorry.
aye.
Okay.
All those opposed, abstentions. Thank you, everyone. make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, actually, Haley, I wanted you to talk about the email you sent the board.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Sorry,
I apologize.
yeah.
We can do that when we're back in regular session.
You're good.
We good?
Mhm.
All right, Haley, I want you to talk about your proposal.
Hi, so the email I sent you guys all 2 weeks ago, probably, I don't know how long ago it was, time's big. I sent you guys all an email about this. What I've been using a lot is movement of student media from all across the country, including, it started at University of Florida with the Alligator, but it's also taking root at ASU, at my school in Ohio, at places like SMU. Basically, the problem that we are seeing over and over again across the country is that for some reason or another, a lot of student media are in basically really big trouble financially because as universities are facing a lot of budget constrictions, they are not assisting as they once did, between like alumni not donating and so on. A lot of student media are like absolutely at their end. I know SMU's student media are shutting down. Even at my own paper, we're having some issues that we're working through. The Daily Alligator at Florida or the Alligator, I think is their name. They're facing like some just like severe budget crunches that are effectively forcing these students to not have the same opportunities they once would have, or otherwise, in a lot of places, these things are just shutting down. So as a result of that, because every student who works in student media like puts their entire life into it, as I'm sure you guys all know from experience or from watching those around you, what is happening is this movement to bring just general awareness to the problem. There's no like specific demand there other than to like acknowledge that this is a problem and get the attention of the people in charge of these things, so like university officials, alumni who, are better off financially and could help, not like obviously support student media on their own, but could help support at all. And so what that organization or that movement is asking of SPJ, and what I specifically am asking of SPJ, is that we formally acknowledge that this is a problem for students across the country and back this, I don't remember what exactly they're calling it now, it's changed names a few times, but the idea is that we are backing this concept in this specific group of saving student media. There's going to be this big social media push on April 25th, I believe, where alumni, like recent alumni who are now working in the field, are going to share their stories of like how student media got them their jobs. A lot of student papers are writing editorials, broadcast stations or student broadcasters doing the same thing. And I think it would be valuable to foster great goodwill with students, which is something we do not have a lot of, as we were talking about last night at dinner. To say, yes, SPJ supports you, we will do what we need to not necessarily financially, there's no financial commitment here, but we will do like what we need to support you as you go and work on this on your own.
I think we could share some of these initiatives through social media.
And we already have been.
Okay.
It's on our Facebook and Twitter right now. I'm writing a blog post, but I think what I'm asking of the board is just like a formal recognition to say, yes, we acknowledge this is a problem. We wish to like verbally affirm that this is a great idea and that students are doing the right thing and protecting their own right to continue working and become better journalists.
Is it possible, Alex, that we could do something at the conference, like a session?
Yeah.
I saw that there's been a big push at UCLA. They've gotten like a bunch of schools in California together to address the issue.
Patty, now one of the things with what we call the SPJ 5, and to be clear, the RTDNA has their own RTDNA 5, and there's their focus more on news and things. Ours, we're trying to get a lot of things that, maybe would not be as popular with the committee because they're not in the RTDNA sphere. So, do we have room in the because we wanted to do an education-oriented session, in that sense, education is less of a piece for RTDNA.
I believe we decided to do the press for education.
Yes,
as our
session. And that's something that has to be in SPJ 5 because it's our program. Yeah. So that's not going to be in joint.
But you use the space left, something, this is near and dear to my heart. I've been an academic for 20 years. I had our student media committee. I work with student media every day on their issues about longevity and support and funding. We're fortunate in Miami, we throw off some departmental funds with student fee funds that cover that, but I know that many groups are sensitive to the general, lapse of advertising and so on and so forth. So, I would like that link. You said that there's a group,
Yeah, I've sent you guys some links already, but I could send along more. There's a Facebook group, there's been blog posts and other, the College Media Advisors, one of their blog systems has written something about it. Like I said, I'm writing something about it for our blog system. All I'm really looking for is an affirmation that, yes, SPJ is supporting or
I think
stands with these
that's
students.
an automatic, but I'm thinking beyond that.
Talking like a board vote?
I think this is an opportunity.
I would like to formally recognize.
Okay, but before we get to that, because I think there's still some wiggle room in some of those SPJ 5, we're still early,
Yeah, I think
early days. I think and then we have 2 education among the 5 with the press reg. This
So
will be
let's talk more
We
about
can
that.
talk that offline.
a sort of a summer where you bring people together, the students together to talk about. That's what you're proposing? And you can work with Patty on
I think that could be valuable as well.
that. Okay, so we can.
Okay, so Haley, would you like to make a motion?
I motion that the board formally recognizes that they support the students working with this safe or whatever the name may be. I can get a more formal title for it. That we formally recognize that this is a important endeavor and that we would support the students involved.
Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Oh, I did have a question. I was wondering, are we gonna do a statement? Is there gonna be a press release? I mean,
We could do one.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can do some
we
social
voted in
media
this
around
one.
whatever's
We could do
happening on the 25th, but more than that, I really think this is an opportunity, since you brought it to our attention. This is a real issue happening across the country that affects our youngest members coming into the profession, and we ought to do more than endorse a day. So I would like to, and I know we're still in discussion here, and I can make a separate proposal, but find some way to institutionalize this, to assign this to a committee, to get more data, to figure out some kind of initiative strategy.
Okay, Patty, I had asked Haley to work with our campus advisors at large, our VP of campus. So I have the 5 people on our board who are dedicated to students and college media are going to be discussing and working together on
We
this.
actually started yesterday.
We started yesterday. Okay, there we go.
And
Keisha.
just, I know it's probably like for other regionals, but I know Region 9, when we have our Denver conference, I am moderating a session that's specifically talking about issues in higher education.
Okay, so we can issue
Yeah, I'll
a
have Jennifer
presser
write
this
something tomorrow.
for the week, and there a quote from me and about the importance. And yes, so yes, go on.
Can I make a push when we do that? Do we send out, and I know this is an extra effort, but I think it's important to our student chapters to raise the profile. I think it's incredibly important to send a loud message to them that A, we are paying attention, we're on top of it, and there's going to be an especially important place for you at the BIJ in September.
And have a link for them, like a join link too, just in case they
Mhm.
want it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'll get that presser out in the coming week. And then
we gotta type to April 25th.
well, if we send it out this week, the presser can promo the 25th.
Which I think and I can get more specific information and send it to you all.
Okay. All right. Do I have a Andy?
We've talked a lot this weekend about financial best practices, important discussion, obviously, but I would like to just remind us about the openness and accountability best practices guide that we promoted several years ago. And as part of that it's giving information about what boards are doing. I think we've made great strides on promoting our meetings, live streaming them, something an afterthought. But one thing just to keep in mind is the best practice, post a summary of the meeting promptly, preferably within 5 business days. This is what we expect of our chapters, so I hope we can also follow that same guideline.
Okay, thank you.
A summary.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Because the full minutes take longer than I
Yeah,
can.
yeah. So can we find, is that feasible? I mean, usually the minutes are some time in coming. What do we typically do in terms of a summary of the
I mean, I
minutes?
think bullet points, in a sense, of we should have.
I know, I'm asking Tara what the office typically does in terms of this. How quickly do we turn out minutes, and is it possible to do a summary of the meeting that's not the official minutes to share with the white membership?
Yes, so typically meetings are not done within a week. I would say it's way longer than that. I think bullet points in a summary is possible. I do also think it depends. Previously, we had a president who would put that out within 5 days, so it was not a staff role. I think that can be discussed internally, but also I think we need to vote on Haley's
Yeah, we're
motion.
still on
Sorry.
Yes, okay, I thought we did, I apologize. Okay, so we had a motion and a second for Haley's proposal.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was confused
Okay.
as to if Lynn
Sorry.
was discussing
I mean, I
it.
think it's already happened.
Yeah,
Okay,
already-
cool. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah,
We were on the same page.
Okay,
It's fine.
We're talking about the presser because we already.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
A point to that, I'm not in the secretary treasurer position anymore, so whoever is in the position, don't hate me.
Okay, that's
But
right.
couldn't the secretary treasurer do that? I don't know.
I certainly could, but if that suggestion was made yesterday morning, I would have been
Yeah,
very
no,
quick to do that. I mean, for example, I was going to ask, do you want me to give you minutes on the finance committee, since I found out as I arrived that I was chairing that, and I could do that. It's a great suggestion, and I do think we could potentially cobble something together and edit each other on anything that's missing. I mean, I'd take a swing at it with input.
Well, I do it anyway, I do it for Region 2 Block. If you want to just copy what I do, that's fine. I just want to ensure that
The world according to Andy.
nationally, we let our members know what we do after we do
agreed.
it. I just think it's very important.
Okay, Mr. Ledger, do you want to say
I
something?
was just gonna mention that, I mean, I think it's very easy for an office to do that sort of thing. And, I mean, you can do it for those who's flew, you can do it on the flight home. Just to send like an empty land.
Can I do it while I drive home?
No,
no.
Because we usually have a good number of, some number of FTX members who don't show up. Like, I've been doing that especially. You have more members not here than we had not here, so I mean, it makes sense to you, at least letting the members know that.
With Andy's assistance, I will, I will put something together and then we'll see how to share it with membership.
Just go down the agenda and.
Yep. Okay, very good. All right, any further discussion? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, Sue moves, second? All right, Jane, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. See you in September. Not sooner.